It is a Saturday morning update on WMAL. I'm Rick Fowler, and of course we've seen the images from Baltimore and the breaking news on Friday night. And to put it in perspective for us, we are joined by Professor Colin Wellenkamp. He's an adjunct professor of public policy at the Washington Adventist University in the School of Graduate and Professional Studies. He worked very closely with 3 mayoral administrations in the city of Baltimore. Colin, it's great to have you with us.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Some of the emphasis this week has been on causes that go back to Mayor O'Malley's term as the mayor of Baltimore. You were involved at that time. Tell us a little bit about what was going on then.
Well, in Baltimore, at least when I came aboard in 2003, the city was suffering from a nasty recidivist cycle where you would have folks offend, go into state supervision, come out, and then reoffend again. And both the mayor and the police commissioner, Leonard Ham, at the time determined that there were support services and transitional services that needed to be brought into play to help these folks. So it wasn't. There was more of they need health care, they need opportunities for education, they need youth mentoring services. So it was a whole round of things that were needed to be instituted to reduce the recidivist rate. And something must have worked, because between 2000 2013, the recidivism rate in Maryland dropped 11%. So something was definitely contributing to a solution. On top of that, Mayor O'Malley was a big proponent and user of the COPS program, which was a federal program called the Community-Oriented Policing Services Program, whose whole point in being was to place police better engagement in the community.
There's clearly a skepticism in the community about the police. And from the imagery that we've seen over and over and over again this week, we saw the 2 white officers with Freddie Gray on the ground, and then the 2 white officers moving Freddie Gray into the van. And then the news out Friday night that of the 6 officers charged, 3 are African American. And my question is, in a healing process, and there is an attempt to unite the members of the community who have the skepticism about the police, does it diffuse the racial factor and become more of an issue of a community concerned about the police in general, as opposed to a perception that it is white police that have insensitivities toward the community?
I don't want to discount and say that there isn't a racial element, because I think there is. That wouldn't be honest to the situation. There is certainly a racial element, and you got to face that head on. But I think what this does demonstrate is it's a little bit more complicated than that, and it may be more a situation of not as much race, but more of the community is under stress, and the police agency is also under stress. The police don't necessarily have enough resources to carry out their mission effectively. And on top of that, they're being encountered by a community that's suffering from terrible unemployment, contracting federal support, and a lack of economic mobility and access to resources like education. All of that mixed together creates an atmosphere of animosity, anger, and mistrust. And there's plenty of experiences to exacerbate this when police in the recent past, and I mean recent being from the 1980s on, have had periods where they've really focused on suppression over intervention and prevention of crime. And when suppression is the sole focus of law enforcement activity, it really does have an effect of breeding resentment, contempt, and anger in the community that may be already suffering from other stresses. So it becomes a more complicated policy question, and a lot of folks maybe don't want to be bothered with too many complicated issues, but that's what's facing us. And that means that the solutions that we could employ to address this and to get what you said, get a community healing, involve equipping police with what they need, making sure police are held accountable and that there's oversight technology employed, but also concentrating on things like education and youth mentoring programs and identifying at-risk youth and giving them resources where they can make something out of themselves and they do have a future. So all three of those pieces are components to the solution.
I think as we saw in Ferguson and we see in Baltimore, that there is sort of a rush to judgment in the community. Sometimes it's fueled by the media. It's fueled by that one clip of cell phone video that we see that is played repeatedly. But what can be done to work in the community so that there isn't immediate suspicion and skepticism and a trial almost in the rumor that floats around the community? What can be done to tone down that immediate suspicion?
I think that immediate suspicion and skepticism stems from anger and contempt and resentment that has already been festering in the community over a period of time between police and neighborhoods. So to address that, we need to eliminate those feelings, and the way that you eliminate those feelings is to bring community policing back. One of my students, he had a really good point. He talked about, do you remember when police used to come to us in elementary school and talk to us in class about what they do? And I said, yeah, I grew up with that. And he said, yeah, well, my kids, they don't have that. The police don't come to their elementary schools and talk about what they do. And I remember growing up with that. I grew up 2 miles away from Ferguson in St. Anne, Missouri, and I had that. And that is a valuable component of what community policing is that you have a relationship with your police. Another student said to me, I used to see senior citizens inform police where there was a bad house or a bad actor on our street. And he said, you don't see that anymore. I haven't seen that in years. They don't want to snitch. They don't want to help a police force that they see more as an occupying element than somebody there to protect and serve. So if we're going to address these situations of rush to judgment and skepticism and animosity, we're going to have to bring back true community policing. But you can't turn around on a dime and expect the police just to be able to do that without support. They have to have training. They have to have oversight technology. They have to have support from the community. They have to have money to make these things happen. And that's where we all need to be understanding.
First, we saw the death of Freddie Gray. We saw the protests, and then we saw the violence. You've spent a lot of time working in Baltimore. Your thoughts on violence in that community?
I served Baltimore under 3 mayors, Martin O'Malley, Sheila Dixon, and Stephanie Rawlings Blake. And the rampant destruction to neighborhoods absolutely does nothing for anybody. You're destroying the city and eliminating the few jobs that your community depends on to stay afloat. And I understand that there might be anger. I understand that there might be a lot of anger. Obviously there is. But if you look at what was destroyed, it wasn't a bunch of government buildings. So it was just rampant stealing. And that just speaks crime of opportunity more than anything else, taking advantage of the situation. And that in any way, shape, or form really can't be tolerated and cannot be condoned. That is certainly one of the things that would make it hardest for a community to heal, is a community that turns on itself.
Professor Colin Wellenkamp, Adjunct Professor of Public Policy in the School of Graduate and Professional Studies at Washington Adventist University. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor.
Absolutely. Happy to do it. Thank you.
News is coming up next on WMAL, and one note, a massive march is planned today in Baltimore, and initially it was to be a protest march. Now it is being billed as a victory rally. That will be in Baltimore later today.